everybody. Oli here. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 7th to the 13th of April 2025. So, this week, there was the III Initiative Showcase. This started last year, I think. And this was essentially a collection of indie publishers kind of getting together and doing their own kind of mini showcase. So that streamed on the 10th. It's about an hour 45 minutes or so, something like that. No ads, no hosts, just games. It was kind of just back-to-back trailers, effectively. So first up, we had a first look at Neverway. And this is from one of the artists of Celeste, but it does seem like it's going to be a kind of Legend of Zelda, and then a little bit of kind of farming stuff, so like Story of Seasons, maybe a little bit of Stardew Valley element to it, but it does seem like it has some kind of horror elements as well. I'm not sure if it's a day-night cycle kind of thing, and that daytime, you do the standard life sim stuff, and then at nighttime it's more horror, more Legend of Zelda, kind of dungeons and that kind of thing. But the art looks pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty terrifying looking thing as well. So like there is as you can see, there's like a relationship system as well with some of the people, some of the townsfolk. So it does look like it's trying to do both. And as I have mentioned before, games that try to do both these things, one of them tends to get the short end of the stick. So either the relationship and life sim stuff is kind of whatever, and the combat is a bit more interesting, or the other way around. It tends to be what happens. Anyway, it is wishlist now. There's no release date or release window or anything like that for it just yet. Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core. I'm not sure if this is a sequel or just an update. Like a new selection of maps or something like that. But anyway, it's more Deep Rock Galactic. If you're not familiar, it's a kind of cooperative. Would you call it an extraction shooter in some ways? Because you're going in, you're doing some mining, you're getting attacked along the way, and you come back with... I guess it is an extraction shooter in a way. Anyway, more of that. Tears of Metal we have seen before, but it's getting an open beta now, in fact, if you want to check it out. So it's sort of a Dynasty Warriors, but in the Highlands of Scotland kind of thing. And I think it does have some roguelike elements to it. Not a whole lot of gameplay in this trailer. But the idea is you are fighting like hordes of enemies, and then you do come across some like larger enemies and stuff like that. I don't know if it has a multiplayer component to it. But the fact that it has a beta would suggest that it probably does have some kind of multiplayer component to it. So April 10th to 17th. So this week, effectively, has its open beta if you are interested in Tears of Metal. Sacrifier, I don't remember what this is. Well, it's coming in Q1 of next year to PC and then later to everything else. I don't remember what this is. Oh yeah, I do remember what this is. It's so it's a pixel art, side-scrolling kind of brawler looking thing. It clearly has like gorgeous art in it, and I think it's got some kind of heaven and hell thing, but it's also sort of in the future, but also sort of fantasy magic stuff. So it's bridging a couple of different genres by the looks of things. It's very pretty art, I will give it that. I don't know about its... we aren't really seeing enough of its gameplay and combat to tell. But yeah, I'll be interested to see more of that next year. Endless Legend 2 is more Endless Legend stuff. Early access, some stage in the summer. Frostrail is the next game from the Barotrauma people. So Barotrauma was a kind of survival submarine management kind of thing, where you were in a kind of post-apocalyptic situation, like mutant creatures roaming the great seas, and you were trying to get from point A to point B and doing... I think it had some element of like trade as well along with it, but anyway, Frostrail it certainly seems like it's doing much the same deal. It's like a survival thing. You got mutants attacking you, but now instead of a submarine, it's a train. It's a fair bit of Frostpunk to it, or not Frostpunk. Yeah, Frostpunk. Anyway, I think it's getting early access soon. It's gonna skip to the end. We've got giant creatures. I don't know how you're supposed to deal with that. That's not Choo Choo Charles. I don't know what the fuck that thing is. Anyway, wishlist now. Okay, it doesn't mention about its early access. I think it's getting early access though. Oh no, that must have been something else. Never mind. It's just wishlist now. Moonlighter 2, The Endless Vault. Again, coming summer this year. Moonlighter is a game that kind of does a half and half thing as well. It's got a half dungeon crawler and then half shop management. So you go into the dungeon, you find all the loot, and then you come out and you sell all the loot. It's effectively the way it works. Starbirds has a demo coming out in June. I'm not really sure what Starbirds is. It has a little bit of like miniature Super Mario Galaxy. Oh no, it's a... Fuck's sake, is it a trade management thing as well? You set up like these little small planets and they do like mine resources and stuff like that, and then it's a bit of like Factorio. I think it's probably a bit closer to it. Anyway, June at some point for the demo. Escape Simulator 2 has a demo out now. That's the one I was thinking. I knew one of them had a demo out now. So Escape Simulator 2. More escape room stuff, simulation stuff. I feel like a lot of the really good stuff for Escape Simulator is user-made levels. So if it's effectively more assets for people to make their own stuff, or more mods or things like that. But it's a good time. The Escape Simulator games, the original one at least, would recommend. But it is obviously much more fun with a friend. Or two. Outbound has a closed alpha running currently, but the game itself is out tomorrow, effectively Monday. So Outbound is I guess it's kind of a survival thing, but it's a fairly like low stakes survival thing. You're just kind of going off-road or doing a road trip in your kind of caravan thing and just finding things along the way to kind of make the trek a little bit easier. What's kind of interesting is you can clearly like deck out the caravan itself, but it seems like you can turn it into like effectively a tree house or a caravan house. I don't know, because it can have like multiple stories and stuff. You're not seeing it here, but you can make a tree house in the area. Or turn the caravan into like this thing here is like it's sitting on top of the caravan. So I don't know if you then have to then collapse everything, or is it just a case of you find a location and just set up and that's it. Then it becomes a survival thing. I don't know. You would think the fact that it's a mobile thing that you'd be driving around a lot, but I don't know how you're going to drive around with an entire fucking house on top of you. Like, I don't understand how that works. So there's some interesting ideas here that I would be curious to see how they actually work. Anyway, it has a closed alpha going on now that you can sign up for, but it looks like the game itself is actually out tomorrow. So maybe that's not as important. Enshrouded is getting a new update. I believe it's still in early access. Timberborn similarly is also getting a new update. Timberborn is a little bit of a Factorio type, but with beavers and wood and water and that kind of thing. BlazBlue, who knows how you pronounce it, who knows. Getting Coucho up and Dead Cells crossover. It's not the only thing getting a Dead Cells crossover, actually. Opus Prism Peak. So the Opus games are pretty good, pretty cool. They are kind of a visual novel and also like a photography sim kind of thing. This one sees your kind of washed up photographer type guy who comes across this child. They are in a sort of in-between spirit world, and the kind of gist of the game is to get the child from where you find them to like the top of a mountain, and along the way you like learn things about yourself and you do some photography stuff and this kind of thing. They are really well done games. Anyway, that is I think later this year. Yeah, 2025. Autumn 2025. Fall. Whatever. Blacksmith Master. Sounds like it's a blacksmith sim, but I don't actually remember it at all. I guess so. It really looks like it's more of like a big town sim than anything else. I guess it's a blacksmith sim. Or a blacksmith. You've got a lot of people working on it, so maybe it's more of like a factory line management kind of thing instead. As opposed to you just being a blacksmith simulator, it's more like a... It's really more like a foundry simulator than anything else. Anyway, quarter 2, 2025, which we are in, I think. Are we? Are we still in quarter 1? I don't know. The financial calendar doesn't make sense. Heroes of Might and Magic, Olden Era, Early Access, Summer 2025. I think this is more of a tactics game than... I may be misremembering what the Heroes of Might and Magic series... Was it always a real-time strategy game, or was there a time when they were sort of an Elder Scrolls knockoff? Or am I thinking of something else? Anyway, this one is an RTS type. Deep Rock Galactic, again, is getting a Vampire Survivors version, effectively. So it's Deep Rock Galactic Survivors. 17th of September will be its 1.0 release. Alters also has now a release date, 13th of June. This is, again, looking really intriguing. The idea with the Alters is it is a base management thing. But the idea is you are one part of a science expedition sent to this planet. Something went wrong when you landed and basically everybody died except you. And now you don't have the people to run all of the different stations. Like, you don't have a doctor, you don't have an engineer, you don't have a bunch of other stuff. So to get around that, you've cloned yourself. But you've cloned yourself in such a way that you're sort of plucking yourself from different timelines, depending on whether you made different decisions. So helpfully, one of them ended up going into medicine, so that's good. You got a doctor, I guess, and maybe you ended up going into engineering, etc., etc. But then you've got other ones where that life path had some other knock-on effects. So the guy who went into engineering never got married, or the doctor, I think, is still in love with your ex-wife or something like that, and really wants to talk to her, but you don't want to talk to her, obviously, because it was an acrimonious divorce or something like that. So there's some really interesting social aspects to it as well. I believe the game has a demo available. I haven't been able to get it to run on on my PC. I think there's a console demo for it as well. I might try that instead. Anyway, that's the Alters. What was it? 13th of June. A lot of games coming out in June. Speedrunners 2, King of Speed. I am Speed. Speedrunners 2 is... I mean, it kind of looks like Sonic the Hedgehog kind of thing, but it's also a bit like Mario Kart in some ways as well. If you haven't played the original Speedrunners, it is a fantastic party game. You know, just to get a couple of people together and playing it. It's a lot of fun. As you can see here, you got kind of grappling mechanics, you got boosting mechanics, and then people can collect different items and stuff like that. The grapple can be used against your opponent to pull them back. And kind of the way the game really works is you don't really know what's coming up the first time through, and then maybe in the second lap you remember that if you step on the gas here a little bit, you might be able to make an extra jump, or if you pull back a little, you might be able to take a shortcut and stuff like that. It does have a little bit of like the racing element to it as well. I mean, obviously it does, because it's a speedrunner thing. But yeah, it's a really... The original, at least, was a very fun party game, and this looks like more of it, basically. So some stage this year. Over the Hill. So this is the next game from the developer who made Art of Rally. And Art of Rally was a similar kind of isometric, lo-fi racing game, but it was a rallying game. Whereas this is really a lot more like an exploration kind of thing, but it's got the same art style as Art of Rally did. But the idea with this is a lot more along the lines of off-roading, exploratory stuff. You're going places that don't have roads, effectively. So you're trying to, you know, outfit your vehicle so that it can handle these kind of things, but you're also driving in a convoy with other people if you want. I think you can play the game solo instead. And a lot of it is just can you get up this mountain or get up this hill with your big truck, with your big Jeep or whatever. Kind of places that you're maybe not supposed to be able to climb in a vehicle, but you're going to try to figure out how to do it anyway. Anyway, that's Over the Hill. I think it's just a game. Yeah, it's just a gameplay reveal thing, so we're not talking about release dates yet. Super Fantasy Kingdom looked just like a mobile game, honestly. Oh no, it's more of like a... Okay, it's a tower defense, maybe? With like some city management? And maybe some roguelike stuff? Yeah. So I think that's what it looks like. It looks like it's a tower defense thing, but then also there's like city management in the background kind of thing going on as well. Lots of timers, I think, is probably what you're going to be seeing a lot of this game. Oh no, they've breached and you're fucked. Alright, anyway. Some stage this year. End of the year, Q3, 2025. X4 Foundation's diplomacy update, so you can now talk your way out of combat if you prefer. X4 is it's kind of a civilization type game, but in space, effectively. Rematch. So we got another look at Rematch. So Rematch is from NoClap. I think it's Slow Clap even. The Sifu developer, basically. And this is their next game. So the idea with Rematch is you are playing just one player on the team, as opposed to like playing the whole team and swapping between players for football. So think of it as a lot closer to something like Rocket League rather than FIFA. But yeah, it's nearly like, I guess it's still trying to take the kind of like technical work you would have seen in some FIFA games and stuff like that. But just really just honing in on you just being the player, like the one player on the team, as opposed to playing the whole team kind of thing. Anyway, 19th of June for early access on that one. No, sorry, 19th of June is when it's launching. You can get early access, I suppose. Vampire Survivors is having a crossover with the Saga series, Saga Emerald series specifically. So that JRPG series, some of those characters are making their way to the Vampire Survivors game. Ikuma, not sure. The Frozen Compass, 2026. So this is the next thing from Moon Eye Studios, who made Lost Ember, which was a kind of wolf walking sim in some ways. This is the next idea is now it's a dog and a person. It does look like it has, well, one, it's very pretty, but it does look like it has some element of co-op to it. If it's actually going the full Hazelight split fiction It Takes Two route, where this is a bespoke co-op game, I don't think so. I think it's a single player game, but there is a co-op mode where one of you can play the dog instead. But from the looks of things, it is kind of still in the same wheelhouse as Lost Ember. It's nature has gone to shit and it's up to you to fix it kind of thing. Anyway, 2026, next year. Shapes with a Z 2. Don't know, it's getting an update. Anyway, V Rising Invaders of Oakvale is an update to V Rising. So it's a couple of new enemies, some new weapon types, some new extra nice things. 28th of April for that one. Necess the Forgotten Depths. I don't know. Again, getting an update thing. Dusk Fade looks like a kind of old school action platformer type thing. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. You would have seen a lot of these kind of games PS2, PS3, and then they kind of disappeared, effectively. But it's good to see like a kind of return. We are seeing a return to some of these games now, as it's nice to see. Anyway, Dusk Fade looks like it's again a kind of a throwback to that period of video games. Yep, rail grinding. Rail grinding's there as well, of course. Ratchet and Clank. Jak and Daxter had a bit of rail grinding in it as well. I don't quite remember. Anyway, Looks fun. That's next year at some stage. Morbid Metal is coming to early access in summer. Just a quick refresher on what Morbid Metal is. It's Devil May Cry, really. Except post-apocalypse and some kind of cyberpunk element to it. But it is like an arena, like spectacle brawler type thing. So lots of fancy combos and attacks and chaining combos together and looking really stylish while you do it. If it has an actual style meter, I don't know. I'm not sure if they're going the full Devil May Cry that way. But yeah, I've liked what I've seen of this so far. I think one element is that a lot of the gameplay, it does look like it's having some frame rate issues. We got a bit of bullet hell here for like Nier Automata, the Nier series. Anyway, yeah, so I'd be mostly curious to see if it can manage to maintain 60 FPS, because some of the gameplay I've seen from it doesn't look like it's able to. Who knows? Eternal Life of Goldman. It's saying it's an announcement trailer, but it's not really. It's mostly announcing the musicians, the composers that will be working on it, and it has quite a collection of composers. Yashinori Nishiki worked on Octopath Traveler, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, who's just joined, I think, and then on top of that, we've got Made in Abyss in Florence with Kevin Penkin, Stray Gods, which was a musical, so I mean that's pretty good. League of Legends, Mason Lieberman, and then Wargroove and Skyrogue, again, very like pumping music for that. So Eternal Life of Goldman looks like it's going to be pretty cool. And it looks like it's going to sound really good anyway, by the sounds of things. But I don't think we have a release date or anything for it yet. Into the Fire was shown off at the last III, I think. I think YouTube has crashed. Has my entire Chrome tab? All of my Chrome may have just crashed. Anyway, we'll talk about it as it tries to unshit itself. Into the Fire was shown off at the last III initiative, and it is a kind of... It's kind of set in a kind of like active volcano area, and you are going into the fire as this kind of firefighter rescue guy trying to find people in the area and rescue them. It looked quite hellish on this like kind of rocket sledge thing that you have to drive around the volcano. Okay, it's back. I didn't know it was from the people who made the Invincible, though. The Invincible is a really good like retro future space walking sim that I thought was really, really well done. Okay, it's not really a rocket sled, I guess. It's more of a propeller sled, but still. Some of the gameplay that was shown off before this had you like driving through like flames and stuff in that rocket sled, and it looked pretty crazy. This is a little bit more gameplay, but off the sled now, so that's not a flamethrower. He's actually trying to put out the fire. I know it didn't look like that, but you've also got some weird supernatural stuff. The fire came alive. It was like a fire creature in there, and it looks like it's going to have like kind of stuff the firefighters would have to deal with, like collapsing roofs and backdrafts and superheated air and stuff like that. But it's a volcano, and now he's probably dead after that. But anyway, early access some stage this year. Clover Pit has a demo out now. Clover Pit looks like it is doing the Balatro thing, but it's a slot machine instead. And then it also has some kind of roguelike element to it that if you run out of money to play, you get dropped in the pit, I think is the idea. But you get like extra, like in the roguelike way, you get like extra bonuses and other things, combinations start to count as more points and give you more coins and things like that. But it is effectively the same kind of deal. But it's a slot machine instead. Anyway, there's a demo available for it now if you're interested. I'm just gonna check OBS real quick. That Chrome lockup didn't mess anything up. Okay, seems like it's fine. Okay. No, I'm Not a Human, launching some stage in autumn of this year. So this is a kind of what do they call it? I'm on observation duty a little bit. So it's a little bit of like spot the problem, spot the anomaly, spot the whatever. People coming to your door or you investigating different things, they will like, you'll have to be on the lookout for kind of weird shit. Like people like there, they got the guy in the bathtub kind of thing. This guy who has a black hole in his stomach apparently. This very very tall person who now disappears. There's like some lots of weird shit happening. Shapeshifters, what have you, prostitutes with weird bugs coming out of their ears. Anyway, kablamo! Fall, autumn 2025. Voidbreaker, there's an open playtest available for it now, but it looks like a pretty cool arena shooter. Just gonna skip ahead here. I'm not sure if it's a multiplayer thing or if it's a... Actually, no, it's definitely not a multiplayer thing. It looks like it's more of a roguelike shooter, first-person shooter. Reminds me a lot of the VR game Synapse. It has a lot of that kind of visuals to it. But it's also going for a kind of, you know, futuristic kind of thing where the guns sort of look like plastic and what have you. But I think the idea is you're being run through various simulations, but there's another AI or another something that is managing to keep you alive through all of these simulations instead of you dying, effectively, is kind of what's supposed to happen. Anyway, yeah, it looks like a pretty cool fast-paced shooter, though. Which apparently has an open playtest right now, if you're interested. And then the one last thing, or the one final thing, was that Katana Zero is getting some DLC. It was announced that it was getting DLC a long time ago. We hadn't really heard anything about it. But it is apparently still on the way. So if you're not familiar with Katana Zero, it is a pretty fast-paced side-scrolling combat game. But the idea with Katana Zero is it's got a little bit of like Hotline Miami to it, in that you are just as vulnerable as every enemy on the screen. So it is trying to get through one area all in one go without getting hit, because if you get hit, you die. But it's what things in the environment can you take advantage of, what abilities that you have can you take advantage of, and stuff like that. And the DLC, I think, is diving into a bit of the backstory of the main character. I found Katana Zero to be quite hard, so I've never actually finished it, so I don't know what the story is, but that big fish looks pretty scary. Anyway, Katana Zero DLC is on the way at some point. I don't think it has a date yet, but it's on the way. Anyway, that was the III initiative. I would encourage you to check out the whole thing yourself. This trailer is still playing because I pressed the wrong button. Hang on, I gotta turn it off. Where is it? Stop. Okay, I pressed the wrong button. Anyway, that wasn't the only updates happening. Sony also showed off Marathon, or Bungie showed off Marathon. So Marathon was announced fucking 3 years ago maybe now, that they were reviving the Marathon IP to make extraction shooter, which was pretty disappointing, perfectly honest. When I did see the original trailer, and like they were kind of the original trailer was very stylish and very slick, and I thought it was really good. And then saying that it was going to be based on Marathon, which is it was one of the earliest first-person shooters that had a very intricate story attached to it. You know, it wasn't just like Doom, Quake, Unreal, like stuff like that. It was like, no, we're gonna tell like a really, really compelling story. The trilogy itself, if you haven't played it, it's a rough game to play. So remember, it's a very early PC game, so it's gonna be a bit of a tough game to play. But the story is very, very good. And what's disappointing is, from what I have seen from people who have played the alpha and who are now talking about it, it doesn't really, like, there is like some very little lip service effectively to the original Marathon games. Like, you could almost say, why did you bother calling it Marathon? Name recognition, I suppose. And it is one of Bungie's earliest games. Anyway, it's an extraction shooter. It's not a campaign shooter kind of thing. What they were showing off on the live stream is about an hour long. They were talking about, you know, that it does have a roguelike element to it. It is an extraction shooter. It's a PvPvE kind of thing. So there will be other players on the map, as well as just kind of like robot enemies that you'll have to deal with. There's a couple of different objectives that you'll be doing. It's not just going in and getting loot. There are like objectives you'll have to do. You have to turn on computers or find map points and stuff like that. Again, something that was mentioned in closed alpha playtesters was that the objectives are pretty boring. To be honest, there's not a whole lot to them. They just go from point A to point B and then go back to point C kind of stuff. What was kind of unanimous is that the guns are fun to shoot, and that is kind of a thing Bungie does. Like, it is they make good shooters. What they don't do is make good live service games, because remember, these are the people who made Destiny. And as Destiny is held up in the industry as being this big success thing, it's really, I don't think it is. Like, it makes a lot of money, sure, but because of a lot of like business decisions they've made, architecture-wise, that they've made, like, so much of Destiny is unavailable to be played now. Like, you don't have access to all of it anymore. Like, a lot of the early Destiny stuff is gone. Like, you can't even play it anymore. And a lot of their like seasonal updates will make it so that stuff that you've already earned, that you may have spent a long time trying to earn, and at the time they were meant to be really good items and stuff, it turns out they're like shit now. You know, they're garbage. Why did you even bother earning them? Anyway, some concessions have been made to make it a little bit friendlier. You're able to revive your team. The fact that you have a team at all in an extraction shooter is a little bit helpful. You're still able to get upgrades and upgrade points and stuff like that just from completing objectives. You don't necessarily have to get out with the loot. There are factions in the game that will sponsor you, so you will occasionally just be revived by that faction instead of just, you know, you're dead and that's the end of it. They showed off a couple of the builds. It's kind of, I guess this is kind of the way that it's done, but they're more like characters, I guess. Instead of you just being a kind of, you know, put the build together yourself, it's really more of a case of you're playing 4 different, well, 6 they're going to launch with. They were only talking about 4 of them. They're fine. They fill the specific niche for these kind of things. You know, the guy that's all guns, the guy that's all sabotage stuff, the stealthy guy. You know, it's they're pretty basic. I think what's frustrating me about Marathon is I really like the look of it. I like the style of it. I like the Marathon in general, and Bungie make good games. They make games that it feels good to shoot, even if the games themselves may not be fun. At least it does at least feel good to shoot the gun in the game. Like, that is about shooting the gun, so they do that part right. But I have no interest in PvP at all. It just doesn't interest me at all. I wish it was a campaign attached to it. Anyway, it does have a release date, 23rd of September. Potentially going up against GTA, maybe. Obviously, a concern here is this is a live service, and Sony does not have a great track record with live services, as has been noted. Concord. The other issue is it won't be a free-to-play game. It's going to be a premium-priced game. They were quick to correct some people who said it would be a full-priced game. They basically said that it will be a premium purchased game, but it won't be full priced. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean it won't be $80, $70, whatever? It's going to be more along the lines of 40 or 20 something. Similarly, Concord, when it did launch, was also a premium priced game, which really limited how many people were going to play it, you know? Especially when you know and have heard that many live services don't, you know, last. So are you going to buy in at the beginning? No? At least you would be at least reluctant to put your money down if you think the game's just not going to exist in a couple of years. Not even a couple. Some of them don't even make it to 1 year. So that obviously was one issue with Concord. There were many issues with Concord, but that was definitely a big one because it, one, limited the number of players who were going to be playing in the first place. It was a console exclusive, so that also limited the number of players. What's a console exclusive? Did it have a PC version? I don't actually remember. I think it did have a PC version. Anyway, it still limited it because it was a premium. People had to pay for it. They're like, the reason Fortnite has so many people playing it is because it's free. So that was one problem. So that could be an issue with Marathon, in that you have, it's a premium purchase game. But at the same time, a lot of extraction shooters are. Hunt Showdown, I think, is a premium purchase game. Tarkov is a premium purchase thing as well. That's not free to play. I don't know about Deep Rock Galactic, whether or not you have to pay for that or if it's a free to play thing. I don't know. One other thing that brought up in the alpha playtest is that the game is very tuned, and maybe a little bit too tuned, because it feels like it is very hard. And if you are coming in as a noob, you're going to get annihilated. The Bungie developers themselves would basically say that we've tried to balance the game in such a way that even if your loot isn't great, if you play well, you still have a chance to win. I mean, play well is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Is play well just all I do is headshots and don't get hit? Like, yeah, technically, I suppose you could win. I guess it's a way to say that no matter how good your loot is, even a low-level gun can still kill you eventually. They hit you enough times. It's not a case of you just don't take damage at all. So I guess there's that element to it, I suppose. Anyway, I don't know how well this will do, to be honest. I don't know if the player base has the appetite for another live service extraction-y thing. Or if if Tarkov, Hunt, Deep Rock Galactic have eaten that lunch already and there's nothing left. There's also, you have to take into account, there's a bunch of other a bunch of other like live service games that are also eating up people's time, which we've talked about before, how the people who play live service games have all of their time accounted for at this point. So they would effectively have to drop the game that they've invested a lot of time in already and potentially invested a lot of money in already. Getting people to jump ship like that, you're going to want to have something pretty compelling, and I'm not sure they do. Again, it looks pretty. There's a very distinct art style to it, and I do like it. But the fact that they're not really going into the story of Marathon, which is probably its best thing, yeah, I don't know. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. I'm not sure if it's going to work out for them. Anyway, that's Marathon. Then we had a little bit of a gameplay reveal for Welcome to Brightville. So Welcome to Brightville is... I don't remember the name of the developer. It starts with a C, but I don't remember the name of it. Who would typically have worked on a lot of ports before. So this is their first, original IP thing that they're working on. And from the looks of it, they're going for a kind of Dishonored BioShock, but also Lies of P a little bit. It's kind of like put all of those together, and that's kind of what they're going for. So what they showed off here is more of the combat element to it. So the idea is it's a bit cyberpunk, but also magic at the same time. So robots are doing both like robot things, but also there's like magic abilities as well. There's a little bit of combat there. Does that still boil down to, yeah, technically it's magic, but it's also you're just firing a pistol. Is it really any different? I don't know. Anyway, it visually looks very pretty. And there's some interesting kind of narrative stuff that they talk about in the Steam description or whatever. I don't think they have a release date ready for it or anything like that. And from what they're talking about as well, it is going to be doing the immersive sim thing. So while they are just showing off combat here, you can stealth your way around instead. Whether you'll be able to talk your way around too, I don't know. But one thing that you're not going to get, obviously, from watching here, because you can't hear it, but there's a lot of music in the game. And a lot of the people talking kind of talk in time with the music. So it does seem like there's going to be some kind of musical element to the game that is a little bit more than just window dressing. We've got this weird elf guy who's also an AI. I'm not really sure how that works. Creepy lad. Anyway, that's Welcome to Brightville. I don't believe it has like a release window or anything like that. It's just keep an eye out for it. Oh no, it does. 2027, or like 2 years away on that one. So they're really getting out early on that. Anyway, last thing, La Chimera is from former Cyberpunk devs? Not entirely sure. So this was shown off, actually, or announced rather, fairly recently. And we're seeing a little bit more gameplay now. It does seem like it is Crisis 4 in some ways. You could think of it that way. It's a first-person shooter. You're like a super soldier of some kind. You have super special abilities and that kind of thing. It looks very pretty. It might melt your PC, so it's got that going for it. That's very Crisis. Yeah, it looks quite pretty. Your guns seem to work along with your special abilities in some ways. What is kind of curious about the game is it was only announced like maybe a month ago. We're seeing gameplay of it now. There's a demo, I think, available next week. And then the game itself is out like the week after. There's a closed beta on now, effectively, yesterday. And then there's a launch date, 25th of April. So it's out. Like, it's out pretty soon. Like, announced gameplay. A closed beta that close to release date is effectively just a demo, because they're not really going to be able to change anything that close to it. So yeah, the time between announcement and game release is quite short, which may or may not be a good thing. Anyway, last thing in our update section, the free game on the Epic Games Store this week is River City Girls. This was a kind of a throwback to, like, I think it's Final Fight. I think it's set in the same universe as Final Fight, but it is like an old school beat 'em up Final Fight, Streets of Rage, Double Dragon kind of thing. It's very good though. It is a very good game. Anyway, it's River City Girls. Moving on. Middle of the month, so PlayStation Plus is getting a refresh. PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium. So we'll be looking at Hogwarts Legacy. We'll be joining PlayStation Plus Extra. Blueprints, which is a brand new release. We'll talk about that in the new releases section. Lost Records, Bloom and Rage Tape 2, which is effectively episode 2 of the Goonies, effectively. Can we even call it that anymore, since that word doesn't mean what it used to mean? Anyway, PGA Tour, this golf game. Battlefield 1, which actually isn't Battlefield 1, it's like Battlefield 4, but whatever. Big multiplayer thing. I'm not even sure that still has a lot of people playing it. Played Up is a kind of... It's a bit overcooked, and then there's like restaurant management on top of it as well. You can design and lay out the restaurant the way you want to, and then do a shift, effectively. Then making its way to PlayStation Plus Premium, Alone in the Dark 2. This is a sequel to the original Alone in the Dark. It is much worse than the first one. And the first one is pretty fucking rough anyway. And then War of the Monsters is a kind of kaiju battler. It's like a kaiju fighting game from the PS2 era. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can play Blueprints, which is what we were talking about. So Blueprints is... the way to put it. So it's kind of a puzzle game. The idea is you are inheriting this mansion, but the mansion itself changes layout every day. So the way the game works is you're drafting cards and laying out different rooms to go through the mansion. And the idea is, the whole crux of the game is there are 54 rooms or something like that. But your uncle or whoever it is you're inheriting it from has told you there's actually a 55th room. And if you can find the 55th room, you can keep the mansion, essentially. So the idea is it's randomly laid out. Every room has its own puzzle element to it. Puzzles persist across different runs, so there's a lot of you having to keep stuff in your head, or write it down, really. And from what I have seen from people playing it and people talking about it, it's a pretty in-depth puzzle game, and people have been raving about it. So we're kind of interested to see how well it works out. Anyway, that's Blueprints. It's on PlayStation Plus, and I believe it's on Game Pass as well. So if you have either of those two subscriptions, you should be able to get the game. But it's also available on PC. I'm not sure if it's on Switch. No, it's not on Switch. So PC, PlayStation, Xbox. Moving on, Promise Mascot Agency. Let me talk a little bit about this one. So on the surface, Promise Mascot Agency is a mascot management thing. It's got a bit of a sandbox open world thing where you're driving around different areas and trying to help out these different misfit mascots. These are effectively mascots that nobody really wants to promote their thing, because they're kind of weird. They're kind of weird mascots. Anyway, you're playing a former like Yakuza fixer kind of guy who did a job. The job went poorly. He's been effectively ostracized out here to manage this mascot agency instead. This is from the same developers as Paradise Killer. Paradise Killer is very weird and very offbeat detective game. And Promise Mascot Agency has a lot of that same element to it. There's a lot of weird shit happening. It does not at any point make sense. And as you can see, there's a lot of fun just driving around doing stupid shit as well. Anyway, again, from what I've heard from reviewers, yes, it's a mascot management thing, but there's so much other shit going on in the game that that's almost the smallest part of it. Anyway, that's Promise Mascot Agency. I think, again, on everything except the Switch. Did it say it there? Ugh. Hang on. I'm skipping around too much. Oh, no, it's on Switch, so it's on pretty much everything. Okay. Right. We have Star Overdrive. So Star Overdrive is kind of like a hoverboard exploration adventure kind of thing. You drop down onto this planet. It's got some like cool hoverboard tricks and stuff, and there's some combat elements to it as well. What I've seen from reviews, the hoverboard exploration stuff is really good, and then everything else is kind of whatever. Which is kind of the vibe I was getting from the trailers anyway. I just feel like the combat was unnecessary in some ways. Like, you could have just left it as a hoverboard exploratory thing. Anyway, your mileage may vary. It depends, I suppose, how much you enjoy this kind of hoverboarding stuff. Anyway, that's Star Overdrive. As far as I'm aware, it's a Switch exclusive for now. It's a Switch exclusive for now, but is making its way to PC and PlayStation at some stage. Commando Origins is a throwback to the original Commandos games. So if you're not familiar, Commandos was a PC real-time stealth type thing. So set World War II, you had a squad of commandos, and you had various missions of infiltrating enemy bases or assassinating enemy combatants and stuff like that. And you'd have different guys on the team who were good at different things. And then having to use them to, execute the mission and stuff like that. I've always found it really hard. I don't imagine this one will be any different. So yeah, I guess if you remember those kind of games, it might be something to check out. Or if you like the idea of a real-time stealth stuff. If you've played things like... It's great when I say this. When you play games like it, and then the name of the game immediately leaves my head. There's one that's set in like feudal Japan where you're playing a bunch of ninjas, and there's one where you're playing a bunch of cowboys, but it's a similar kind of stealthy isometric thing. I fucking remember the name of it now. Anyway, moving on. Hitting early access is Into the Dead, Our Darkest Days. It's got a little bit of a... It's a little bit This War of Mine, but zombies kind of deal to it. I think there was a demo available during the Steam Next Fest, but I'm not sure if it's still available. But anyway, the idea is it's a side-scrolling survival thing zombies, base management, people management kind of thing. So just, effectively This War of Mine, that kind of survivor management stuff, but also zombies, basically. Anyway, that's hitting early access now, I think. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead a lot here, but I think it's hit early access. Yeah, it's there now, anyway. And then the last one is a remaster, slash re-release, I suppose, of the Talos Principle, the original Talos Principle. So Talos Principle Reawakened is effectively the first game, but it's been given a new lick of paint. It's got HDR, it's got all of the new shit, the new graphical fidelity things. And I believe they have added 1 or 2 new areas for the Reawakened game. So if you were a fan of the original Talos Principle, if you haven't played them before or don't know what the games are, they are like the kind of sprawling puzzle game, effectively. I'm not sure if the puzzle editor was available in the original game, but it is available in the Reawakened game, so you can make your own puzzles too if you like. Includes Road to Kahana, which was a DLC thing for the original game, and then I think there's a new area that they've added for Reawakened. Is it in this? Yeah, in the beginning. Okay, so there's a new area as well. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So, as we kind of would have assumed after the Switch 2 announcement, there's like smaller details are making their way out, and a lot of them are not great. A lot of them are pretty anti-consumer, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, so this is from Ethan Gach for Kotaku. It's a bit of an opinion piece, and then also a bit of a news piece at the same time. But the Switch 2 should be a slam dunk. It's just a better version of the Switch. It's like, why are things going the way they're going? Anyway, the latest kind of wrinkle in that is that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the Switch 2 version, if you want to get everything and the DLC and all of that as well, it's $90 for the full thing. The Switch 2 version on its own does not include all of the DLC that came out for the Breath of the Wild. So that's pretty shit on top of it. Game came out 2017. It's a pretty old game at this point, 8 years almost. To still be charging such an exorbitant price for it. And yeah, it's Nintendo, they'll fucking get away with it, but it's not a good look for the rest of the industry. Anyway, so the Switch 2 version won't include the game's Year 1 DLC, which is effectively the expansion pass stuff. That's the new story mission, the difficulty mode, extra gear, extra side quests, the motorbike thing. It's all locked behind an additional $20 upgrade, so you've already got the $10 upgrade to go from Switch 1 to Switch 2, and then it's a $20 upgrade to get all the DLC with it. What's not clear is whether or not if you already have the DLC, do you still have to pay the $20 to get the Switch 2 version of the DLC? I don't know. God, I hope not, because that's fucking ridiculous. But anyway, in other words, anyone coming to Breath of the Wild for the very first time on Switch 2 will need to spend $90 for the full experience. It's a bit ridiculous. Ethan Gach then says, like, contrast this with how CD Projekt Red are handling Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk 2077 for the Switch 2 includes Phantom Liberty, which is the DLC. It only came out last year. Or sorry, not last year, 2 years ago. It's a complete edition. It's only $70. Only $70. This is the fucking thing we're getting into now, where we're saying, oh, it's only $70. It could be worse. Could be much, much worse. I'm not sure if that's a good contrast necessarily. But it is a kind of thing is that it's including its DLC in its complete edition. Anyway. In isolation, the Breath of the Wild DLC thing you could just say, yep, that's Nintendo doing Nintendo things, but it's on top of a bunch of other shit that's happening around the Switch 2. Things like Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 Edition, Mario Kart World are both $80, which suggests that Nintendo first-party things are going to be $80 going forward. The Nintendo 2 Welcome Tour thing isn't bundled with the console. It's a separate $10 purchase. Fucking stupid. Some physical games will just have a DRM key on it. They won't have the actual game code, so there's no reason to buy a physical game anymore. Which is elements of game ownership, game preservation. What's going to happen with that on the Switch 2? That's not a good look. the game chat thing, the fact that there's a button on your controller that requires a subscription service. Not a good look. And then they've been kind of reluctant to talk about any other things about the game's specs, like what's the deal with the battery life? Is it better than the Switches? Is it worse than the Switches? Why did you go with an LCD screen when the original Switch got an OLED screen? Like, why did you go backwards? The fact that there isn't Hall effect on the Joy-Cons. I did say last time that they did have that, but it turns out they don't, actually. They don't have Hall effect on the Joy-Con, so how are they going to handle the drift issue that the original Joy-Con had? Don't know. Switch 2 editions of Metroid Prime 4 will have the full code on the cartridge, but it's debatable which games do and don't now have full game code on the cartridge. Do they or do they not? And we still don't know why randomly in Europe the physical games have an extra $10 thrown on top. Why? And also, why if the fucking cartridge doesn't even have anything on it? Why are we still having to pay an extra $10 for it? And then, of course, there's the $450. Fucking thing costs $450. And Jesus Christ. Doug Bowser had this to say about the price. We recognize that there are some people that may not be able to afford that price point. That's why we wanted to make the other Switch platforms available. If you can't afford Switch 2, you can buy Original Switch. Which is exactly what Don Matrick said about the Xbox One. If you can't, and it wasn't really about price for the Xbox One, it was if you don't have a robust internet connection for the Xbox One, you can just buy Xbox 360 instead. Don Matrick told people who didn't have a good internet connection to just buy a 360. That didn't go down well for them. And Doug Bowser, it's not going to go down well for you either. Anyway. It doesn't mean the Switch 2 won't be a good console. You know, is it actually worth the money with all of the specs put into it and so on? That's more for the market to decide, I guess. I do feel it will be Nintendo doing Nintendo things and they'll get away with it because it's Nintendo. You know, it's the only place you can play Legend of Zelda. It's the only place you can play Super Mario and so on. They'll get away with it. It's what it's going to do to the rest of the games industry, who will see the same thing and think, hey, we put just as much effort into our game, we should be able to charge $80 for the next piece of shit Call of Duty game that comes out. Anyway, the nickel and diming has gotten completely out of control, and I would have to agree with Ethan Gack from Kotaku on that one. Anyway, there's more, like, just little small things coming out about the Switch 2 that makes any kind of hype kind of difficult to maintain. Anyway, over the weekend, Microsoft released a Gen AI remake of Quake 2. It was an unmitigated piece of shit, but everyone talking about it was like, oh, this is the future of video games, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, we had Mike Straw here from Insider Gaming talking about their experience with us. It's not glowing. Anyway, yeah, this to say about it. Yeah, it runs after about 10 to 15 minutes of waiting for the game to load. It's not loading anything, but okay. It's probably just to get the fucking LLM up to speed. But that's about all it does. It's a janky, unplayable mess that feels heartless. In fact, it's nothing more than an insult to everyone who actually cares about the games industry and the history of it all. So I did watch a couple of videos of people playing it, and the way it works is it is generating a new frame based on your input. And then it's basically trying to guess what the next most likely frame would be for the game, but it's not based on any kind of knowledge of a level layout. It's not based on any kind of knowledge of video game mechanics. It's not based on any kind of knowledge of persistency either, because there's quite a few people who would turn left, see a different scene, turn right, see a completely different thing than what they had seen beforehand, turn left again, and what they had seen previously isn't there anymore. It's completely different again. Like, there's no element of persistency to it. If you wanted to, like, backtrack through the level to try a different branch or something, you'll find that there is nowhere to go to backtrack to, or when you backtrack, that branch has disappeared, or any number of things. There was a very funny one that I saw of a guy just looking straight forward, then looking down at the ground, then looking straight forward again, and the scene would be completely, like, not even remotely close to what the last one was. Look down, look up, and it just every time was completely different. And it's like, this is not a video game. This is garbage. Microsoft has this to say about the thing: every input you make triggers the next AI-generated moment in the game, almost as if you were playing the original Quake 2, running on a traditional game engine. You know what you could do? Instead of almost playing Quake 2, you could just play Quake 2. Like, is it shareware at this point? I feel like it is, but anyway. All it does is try to generate a new area of a level every time you turn a corner. That means if you want to backtrack and go elsewhere, chances are you can't because it has changed. Anyway, it's unmitigated garbage, basically. But all of the AI bros are all over it, just jerking themselves off thinking about it. Anyway, why bring up this thing? It's because I was trying to remember what the next story was. Anyway, why bring up the Gen AI thing invading the video game industry is because it kind of already is. So UK Union Equity gathers at BAFTA Game Awards to call for improved conditions for performers. So you may or may not be aware of it. The BAFTA Game Awards is the British Association of something, but it's British Game Awards, effectively. And Equity is the Voice Actors Union for the UK, so it's somewhat similar to SAG-AFTRA in the US. It's a kind of similar thing, but it's the UK instead, and specifically it's for video game voice actors. Anyway, at the BAFTAs, they called for an improvement in pay and terms and conditions for performers, so they were picketing outside of the BAFTA awards themselves. They had this to say about it. It's great to see the successes of the video game industry on show at the BAFTA Game Awards and for the incredible achievements of its workforce to be celebrated. This is General Secretary John Barclay. Assistant General Secretary. So that's all good. However, but Equity is here to make sure poor practice frequently reported by Equity members does not continue to be ignored by industry leaders. The video games industry is worth over £7 billion in the UK alone, and in attendance tonight are bosses from some of the richest companies in the world. Yet these companies continue to ignore Equity's calls to work with us to introduce union-negotiated agreements in the UK that would improve pay and terms and conditions for our members. Pay for video game performers in the UK has stagnated despite games companies receiving almost £200 million in tax breaks. A lot of video game developers get tax incentives and they don't push that along to their developers and employees. Performers do not have proper protections from artificial intelligence or NDA misuse. NDA, non-disclosure agreement, basically saying you can't talk about the very poor conditions you were forced to work under. And they need safer workplaces so they don't injure their vocals or bodies or experience improper recordings of intimate scenes. So a lot of that is injuring their vocals. It's getting voice actors to do like really strenuous yells and roars and that kind of thing. Really fucks up your vocal cords. And that will obviously prevent you from working on other projects while you heal. Injuries to bodies, as a lot of it is performance capture now. It's not just voice work. A lot of it is physically performance stuff as well. Do they have proper stunt coordinators on hand to deal with that kind of thing? A lot of the time they don't. And improper recordings of intimate scenes, it's, do you have a sexual wellness person on site to make sure nothing fucked up is happening, basically. Anyway, in an industry that generates enormous wealth, Equity members deserve much better. Again, would have to agree. The rest of the article does highlight the US SAG-AFTRA that is currently on strike, the voice acting side of that. Also because of generative AI things, but also for the similar things that Equity brings up, which is just physical safety for their members. Anyway, this is an ongoing issue. The publisher side of it would have you believe that they're very close to a deal, but the union side of it are saying, nope, we're not remotely close to a deal. So, yeah, you might be having silent Destiny updates in foreseeable future. Alright, moving on. More publishers being shitheads to people. You never owned the game, insists Ubisoft to the Crew players that are suing the publisher. So there is a class action lawsuit going on or has been brought before the court at least, that alleges it's a game for the crew and effectively alleges that Ubisoft removing the game from people's libraries or turning off the servers and stuff like that, making the game unplayable, is effectively in violation of the ownership that people are meant to have of the game. They bought the game, they should be able to play the game, and because they've turned off the servers and removed it from your library, it's like you've kind of stolen from us. Maybe. This is kind of what the class action is going to try to clarify. Anyway, Ubisoft's side of things responded to a legal action from players of defunct racing game The Crew, insisting that those players never owned the game in the first place. This is the whole, you didn't buy the game, you bought a license to play the game bullshit thing. Anyway, the lawsuit complains that the game is now unplayable when servers were shut down last year. Ubisoft obviously saying that you only bought a license to the game. You didn't buy the game itself. Players should never have expected the game to be usable in perpetuity, which you kind of do expect for like a music CD you buy, or a film DVD you buy, or a book that you fucking buy, that you'd be able to read the book as long as it doesn't deteriorate. And similarly for DVDs and CDs. But the point is, you should be able to play it, right? You shouldn't need to ping a server to make it work. Apparently not for video games, though. Anyway, The Crew's ordinary intended purpose was to provide consumers with a revocable limited license to access its content pursuant to the unmistakable warnings on the product packaging and Ubisoft's terms of use that everybody definitely reads. Warnings on the product packaging is like really small, white, black and white. It might say something about it there. Plaintiffs received just that for years, and Ubisoft therefore provided The Crew consistent with and fit for its ordinary advertised purpose. This is kind of a technically you're correct, I suppose, kind of thing. But it also, I'm not sure if there's a legal precedence yet for the whole terms of service, terms of use thing, and people saying I accept, and that like nobody fucking reads that. We know, like, you're well aware nobody reads that it can't actually be enforced. Anyway, Ubisoft goes on to argue that the game being under a non-permanent license was clearly stated on some of their packaging, but was it stated on all of their packaging? That might be an issue. Anyway, they also state that the statute of limitations to make this sort of complaint is up. Debatable, because I don't think there is a specific statute of limitations. Anyway, plaintiffs make a counter-argument that vouchers for the game had an expiry date of 2099, which means the statute of limitation is not, in fact, up. Again, is that enforceable? We don't know. I guess we'll find out. Anyway, the issue was that after 10 years of support, the game's servers were taken offline, and then the game was disappeared from game libraries. And I think that's kind of be the real problem, because it means people wouldn't have been able to make player-hosted servers or something like that. Like some MMOs that were shut down have had some success with like player-created servers, player-hosted servers, and stuff like that, which meant the game was able to keep going. But because the game is like being disappeared from people's libraries in the first place, it's like how is anybody supposed to make that work? Anyway, the plaintiffs are seeking monetary relief and damages for those impacted by the server shutdown. I feel like they would also settle for you just putting the fucking server back up, or making it like player hostable or something like that, or just making the game playable offline. Anyway, this last bit of the article does go on to highlight that Valve have made similar arguments about the it's only a license thing. There is now a sign on some games to show a more prominent warning to make it clear that you are buying a license, you are not buying the game itself. Valve have some kind of leeway, I guess, because it's it's downloadable. You don't actually have a CD or whatever, but it's still not a great look that, you're buying a license to access the game. You don't buy a license to access a film or access a song or access a book or access anything else. And it's why video games have this thing. You don't buy a license to look at the Mona Lisa kind of thing. I mean, I guess you do. Do you buy a ticket to Louvre's Louvre? Anyway, the point is, locking culture behind this kind of licensing thing, I don't think should be allowed, but I guess we'll find out what happens with the lawsuit itself. Although kind of interestingly, and I didn't actually know, is that Valve don't allow you to legally pass on your Steam library after you die. You can't. There's nothing stopping you from passing on your credentials, but I guess like legal ownership is, they say no because you're just buying a license and not buying the games themselves. So I guess you can't put it in your will, but you can, just make an elaborate puzzle for your kids to figure out how to access your Steam library. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of not owning your games, sometimes the developers don't own their games either. Bankrupt indie developer behind Rime and Guilt selling off game rights at open auction. So this was kind of news from end of last year that Tequila Works, the people behind Rime, Guilt, Deadlight, a couple of other things, declared bankruptcy at the end of last year. And now to kind of recoup and pay off their debts and stuff like that, they are selling rights, trademarks, and some unfinished prototypes at auction. So they're taking bids for the next month or so, and then the auction will happen the end of May, I think. Anyway, Rime and Guilt are currently both fetching the most interest at something like, what would you expect an IP to go for? Rime is probably not that well known. Guilt is maybe a little bit better known, but even then it's probably not super well known. But anyway, it's going for about €15.50. So Tequila Works is a Spanish developer, I think, so the auction will be taking place there. But that translates to about £13.5 sterling, and dollars, I don't know. Anyway, Deadlight is only going for around €2,500. Like, that seems really cheap. But again, I suppose it's an auction. It can always go up from there. And they did have a couple of playable prototypes that the way that would have worked is they would have sent those around to different publishers to say, hey, is there some appetite for you to kick in some money to make this game, and we'll make a publishing agreement with you and you'll get a percentage, yada, 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 or you'll get the IP itself and so on. Anyway, it seems like nobody bit. The Ancient Mariner is described as an open-world narrative, action-adventure thing focused on human emotions as the engine of gameplay, which sounds a lot like Rime again. Dungeon Tour sounded kind of interesting. So Dungeon Tour was meant to be a kind of management game where you would manage a horde of tourists who are visiting a dungeon. So it's got a little bit of Dungeon Keeper in that you're managing a dungeon, but then it's got a little bit of Overcooked in that people are like walking into traps or being accosted by skeleton warriors and stuff like that, and you try to manage it to make sure the tourists get through, pay their money, you get good press, and you get more tourists in to go through your dungeon and stuff like that. That seemed like a fun idea, but I guess nobody bid for it. And then Brawler Crawler was a multiplayer combat thing. It sounded like a MOBA. It's a little bit outside of Tequila Works' wheelhouse. Anyway, it's like a shockingly small amount of money to own a video game IP, you know? Maybe not. Granted, it's not a particularly well-known one, and also it's a bankruptcy auction, so they kind of have to sell it for whatever they can get, but it's a surprisingly small amount of money. Anyway, last surprise. Speaking of things they have to sell, Sony have to sell another Last of Us game, apparently, or Last of Us bundle. Last of Us Complete Bundle announced as Sony figures out new way to sell these games again. It's $100 for Last of Us 1 and 2, effectively. So a few days before the premiere of the next season, this is really why they're doing this, to see if they can sell the game again. You can have The Last of Us Complete, which is effectively Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, remastered in a single package. For some reason, the physical version won't arrive until July. For some reason. The digital version you can get right now. For some reason, the physical version is taking a while. I don't know if... Is there maybe like some merchandise that comes with it? But it's kind of weird for them to have such a delay between them. And maybe they are trying to capitalize on the season starting, that they'll just put the digital one out now, because the games are obviously done. They're done for a long time, because they keep fucking releasing them. But I guess the whatever physical shit that's supposed to come with it isn't ready yet. It's wild that we keep getting re-releases of these two games. Yeah, wild is a word for it. There are other words we could use. We're approaching Skyrim levels of ridiculous now. We're not quite at Skyrim exactly, but we're not far off, maybe. first game launched in 2013, and we have since seen The Last of Us, the original, on PS3, The Last of Us Remastered on PS4, The Last of Us Part 2 on PS4, The Last of Us Part 1, which is apparently a remake of the original game, but you'll have to squint to tell if it was actually remade, on PS5. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PS5 PC. The game had only just fucking come out, but apparently we needed a remaster of it. And now The Last of Us Complete, which is both games together. What's the next thing they're gonna do? We're gonna get an anniversary edition, I think, at some point. And a legacy collection, maybe, along the lines. Who knows? They're gonna find another way to fucking make another Last of Us. Sony, make a new game challenge. Impossible. Moving on. Alright, so into the community kind of things. I was not entirely sure where to put this, because it sort of straddles the line between community and industry bullshit. Reggie technically was part of the video game industry, but he doesn't, as far as I'm aware, hold a position in the industry anymore. But he is adjacent to video games still, so it kind of fits in the community. You know, I wasn't entirely sure where to put this, so I put this in the community things. Anyway, Reggie Fils-Aime seemingly weighs in on Switch 2 Welcome Tour debate by highlighting the success of Wii Sports. So this was the whole thing about the Welcome Tour being a $10 purchase and not a bundled in thing. Reggie didn't say anything about Welcome Tour or anything like that, but he just said, hey, remember how great it was when we bundled Wii Sports with the Wii in the US and Europe, and how well the Wii did because we did that? That was a fun time. That's it. I'm not going to talk about Welcome Tour anyway. Fans expected the game to be packed in, which is Welcome Tour, and was kind of surprising that they were charging for it. Nintendo's Bill Trinen had to say that $10 is not an exorbitant price in his eyes. That's not your decision to make, Bill. And if it's not an exorbitant price, that means you could have absorbed it. You could have just not charged for it. You're already charging $450 for the console, and the whole point of Welcome Tour is to introduce you to the console. If it's not an exorbitant price, it works both ways, Bill. If it's not an exorbitant price, it means you didn't have to charge for it either. Anyway, President and CEO of Nintendo of America, or former President and CEO of Nintendo of America, Reggie, was referencing his push to pack in Wii Sports, and how it was actually a bit of an argument that they had between himself, Miyamoto, and a few other people, saying that they wanted to charge for Wii Sports, and he was saying, no, don't charge for Wii Sports, we'll take the hit on it, but we'll sell way more consoles. Anyway, he posted clips to Twitter, but it was from a podcast he appeared on 2 years ago, so this isn't like a podcast he had just appeared on, and he was like promoting it, and it happened to be coincidentally at the same time people were having the Welcome Tour discourse. He went out of his way to post these, so like it's definitely a comment on Nintendo. What the fuck are you doing? Anyway, so Fils-Aime had to say at the time, it's an understatement to say that Mr. Miyamoto pushed back. This is about the Wii Sports bundling with the Wii. During the development of Wii and Wii Sports, the goal was, we wanted the system to be attractive to not only the most active players, but to new players, and we saw Wii Sports as the way to be able to do that. Absolutely correct. He has absolutely been proven correct at that point. Wii Sports was definitely a thing that got many people to buy a Wii. Anyway, in the Americas and in Europe, Wii Sports was packed in, but it was not packed in Japan, which created a bit of a test market. It was obvious in the markets that Wii Sports was packed in. Wii became much more of a phenomenon. Wii Sports became much more of a phenomenon. This is basically say that packing it in made it sold extremely well in America and Europe and didn't sell quite as well in Japan. Anyway, we'll leave blueprints to loop in the background. Anyway, that is your news for the 7th to the 13th of April 2025. So we had the III Initiative showcase. Again, it's a bunch of indie publishers getting together to show off their own games without having to, pay a shit ton of money to Jeff Keighley to appear on those showcases and stuff like that. They all just get together and do it themselves. I think it's a good thing. I think it's something well worth supporting. Anyway, they showed off a lot of games. Some of it is early access games that are getting updates, and then a couple of them were like brand new things that we hadn't seen before. Good stuff. I thought it was good. the whole initiative, or the whole showcase itself, I think is less than an hour long, but more than 45 minutes, somewhere in between there. If you want to check it out yourself. Marathon's really long marathon live stream was probably not necessary. It could probably have just been a blog post. I'm not going to play it because it's a PvP thing, but I would be somewhat concerned that it's maybe not going to do great because it's another live service thing in a pretty saturated market at this point, and then also, it's the way to put it, I kind of feel like video game community in general is maybe a bit sick of live service games. Like, maybe they've had too many. Maybe this is just me, my own personal feelings around it, but it's like, can you make a fucking single player campaign game, please? And quit it with the live service shit? Just give it a break for a bit. You know? On one side of things, I kind of wanted... this is kind of mean, I suppose, to say, but on one side, I kind of want it to fail. I kind of want Sony to learn this fucking lesson. But at the same time, there's a lot of people working on it, and they would be laid off, because it's no way Sony executive is going to take fucking responsibility for it. So at the same time, I really don't want it to fail, because then it's going to hurt their fucking employment. But anyway, that was Marathon. Welcome to Brightville 2027. It's going to be a while. We're kind of announcing that one a little too early, I think. And then Lacumero took the complete opposite approach and announced it, and practically is going to release it almost within a month. Which is pretty nuts. PlayStation Plus update, pretty shit, honestly. I know a lot of people do like Hogwarts Legacy. I don't like Harry Potter in general, so I'm not arsed. I don't care about that game. And every other game around it is whatever. It's not all that interesting. The PlayStation Premium thing, which is meant to be the, most expensive tier of their subscription service, getting 2 whatever games. Alone in the Dark 2 is terrible. Like actively a terrible game. And then War of the Monsters is okay. Anyway, what are Sony doing? I don't know. You could just keep asking that question. New releases, Blueprints is getting a lot of good press. Promise Mascot Agency, similarly, getting a lot of good press. Star Overdrive is getting it has its one thing that it does really well, and then everything else around it isn't as good. It's not that it's bad, it's just okay. And then Commandos Origins, I find, is probably a bit of a niche game for people. What else were we looking at? Talos Principle. I guess if you haven't played it yet, I feel like you could probably get the original for pretty cheap at this point, if you necessarily need to have the remastered version. Our industry bullshit thing. Again, the Switch 2 is Nintendo's going out of its way to kill any hype for the console, because every small thing I hear about it isn't good news, it's bad news. It's anti-consumer news. It doesn't seem like a little news article that comes out to say, oh, by the way, this thing and thing is, free, or this thing and thing requires no additional whatever, etc. It's like, no, this thing you assumed that would be a free upgrade is expensive, and this thing you assumed that would be bundled in isn't bundled in, and there's other things. We still don't know if the original Switch accessories work with the Switch 2. Can you still use the Joy-Con off the Switch with the Switch 2? You wouldn't get the mouse support, sure, but you get everything else. You would think. The Switch Pro controller, the only difference between the two of them is the chat button. That's it. So you would assume you could use it, but apparently not. We don't know. In fact, the GameCube controller, this is a great one. The GameCube controller doesn't work with Switch 2 games. It only works with the Nintendo Switch Online GameCube games. That's it. Fuck's sake. I think the GameCube controller that you could buy for the Switch did work for the Switch, obviously, because they didn't have GameCube games. But it's somehow this new controller has less functionality than the old one, which is, again, Nintendo being Nintendo, but should be a little bit less Nintendo for a few, like a couple of, maybe try a couple of years of being less Nintendo-y. Anyway, Microsoft's Quake 2 Gen AI thing is garbage, and it is frustrating seeing people showing it off and saying, oh, how great it is, because it's not. It's terrible. And it's trying to think that this will get better. It won't. It's still just predicting things. And that's not to mention how it ran at like 2 frames per second. Like, there's nothing here. This technology is being used for things it's not meant to be used for. Anyway, Ubisoft pulling the, you bought a license, you didn't buy a game. We're all somewhat aware of that, but I don't think it's been legally challenged yet. So whether this lawsuit actually goes ahead, this class action goes ahead, or whether it's dismissed or it's settled or whatever, it will be curious to see where it goes. I have a feeling it'll be dismissed. And if it's not dismissed, it'll probably be settled. Ubisoft, however, may not be around to deal with that because they are getting some pushback about their attempt to gut Ubisoft and siphon out all of the good IP, all of the performing IP, and leave Ubisoft with just rabbits, pretty much. That doesn't seem like shareholders going along with that one, so we'll see how that works out for them. Yeah, and then Sony are still again trying to sell The Last of Us again to people. Anyway, it's been a week. Next week, something's out next week. No, it's not. I was gonna say Clair Obscura is out next week. It's not. It's out the week after that. Okay, so next week, I don't know. Indiana Jones, I think, is gonna make its way to PlayStation. Other than that, I'm not aware of any major release next week. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Have a rest of your day. I'm not talking about live streams, me playing video games live, because it just frustrates me. So I'm just gonna not talk about it by talking about it. Shit. Anyway, this is the last I'll say about it. If you see me, you see me. If you don't, you don't. Because otherwise, it's just frustrating me. And I just sound like a broken record. So I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your week, rest of your day, rest of whatever, and hopefully talk to you next time. Bye.